know if you can see this here, but we can do this experiment in real time.
What's their theory of what's plastic and what's metal?
We are talking about an average low and an average high.
We're super high. I wonder if it's going to be the same.
It's what do you know and how do you know it?
They're 8 years old, and to understand something that they can't see.
If we're not turning them on to science in elementary school, then I don't think we're doing our job.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning.
The teachers have been working together for a year now, and this is the opportunity to know each other, to see each other.
The goals are to introduce the light probes, the new technology, to have them work with ideas of averages, and to do some further work in the pedagogy of discussions.
We're going to continue our focus on formative assessment so that the discussions that we have and facilitate result in serious learning.
I think I'm a lot more focused on the scientific method and a lot more comfortable talking to kids and asking kids questions. So much more inquiry based with the lessons I'm teaching too.
What is the similarity or difference between what you call the scientific method and we call the inquiry cycle?
For me, the scientific method kind of comes to an end. You have a question, and then you have a conclusion, and then you stop. Yeah. Whereas the formative assessment model is more cyclical, so you end with more questions, which broadens your understanding about the whole concept.
To us, you know, the scientific method never ends. Every experiment, every investigation always generates more questions.
And you're saying that you feel that the scientific method stopped, but the inquiry model went on for more questions. So why is that?
It has really a lot to do with where you are. And with the inquiry model, a lot of us are in that process that there might be 3 or 4 questions that we're trying to narrow it down. But whereas the scientific method, traditionally, and I may be wrong, we have a question, and that's what we're trying to solve.
Right, if you go into like a high school class, what's your hypothesis, collect your data, analyze your data, conclusion, turn it in, done.
I think even at the end, whether their hypothesis was correct or incorrect, they should still be inquiring, well, why did that happen? And, well, what does that mean? If that happened, then something, you know what I mean?
But I feel the popular perception between inquiry, and I think that way would be distinguished between our students, and I think even among other colleagues, is that once we've answered this question, the experiment is done, and I can give you a grade, and we can move on to the next topic.
Whatever happened, whether it supported your hypothesis or not, it should lead to new questions. So they have to write 2 or 3 new questions that came up in the course of doing the experiment. And that's the last, you know, after the conclusion, they write their new questions, and then that's what gets handed in.
I think the word conclusion is there in their mind going, end. Conclusion is the end.
Give them
I did my stuff. I have no questions.
Even if they could care less about those questions, that the way the scientific process works and the way scientists work,
right.
The way that people do science is that there's always new questions coming about, and it's just a never-ending process.
I can completely agree with you. Just that some kids are never gonna, you know what I mean? This is like certain kids are just like, what would happen if we stuck it in soda?
I mean, I was a teacher for over 40 years, and the way the curriculum is written, often those activities are written as there are right results and wrong results, conclusion, end, on with it. But if we can just reshape that somehow.
If you could ask them to make predictions, new predictions, that's another thing which scientists can't resist doing. And in fact, we're called upon to do that. And then the second thing is, if you had $1 million, how would you redo the investigation so that it would be more sterling?
Does Massachusetts have an average temperature?
Yes.
When?
And the second question, how can you estimate just by looking at the graph? If you just sort of go halfway in between the low and the high, you know, you got 35. That would be a reasonable estimate.
It would be redundant every 5 minutes, right?
It would slowly go down. Yeah. But is it really going to change anything?
Would the highs and lows of the day be more important information to you if you were going on a trip for the day?
What is the average temperature in January in Massachusetts, which requires deciding when to take data and where to take data, and what constitutes better data, and how do you know?
But it's not exact.
No, ours is much more.
Oh, it's the same. It is? It is.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we do the average of the highs and the average of the lows, and when you put those two together and divide by 2, it's that. And then when you do all the highs and the lows together and just take the average of those, it's the same.
You found something to be true in one case.
Well, no, scientifically, you need to try it more than once.
How many times?
At least 3. Right?
And maybe the fourth time it would work.
They're bringing up many different points of view and coming to agreement pretty quickly, which is interesting.
Our question was, would it matter if we found the average daily low and then the average daily high, and then figured out the average daily temperature based on the low and the high? Or if we just put all 20 temperatures together, would that make a difference? And Laura dug out her computer and she got Excel out, and you're going to get the same temperature either way. But we needed to prove that. So that was kind of a good learning experience for us. We can apply that to different graphs in different situations.
The teachers are working with a new measuring device that they haven't used before. It's a light probe that measures the intensity of light falling on a surface. So partly what they're doing is learning how to use that probe. So there's a piece of this is a measuring activity and a piece of it that's an analysis activity involving averages.
Yeah,
you
at a
can
certain
hold
height.
it
There you
at a
go.
consistent height. You know what I mean?
So it's the same distance of space.
I mean, how do you know it's 1 or greater than 1 if it maxes out at 1?
That was my understanding that the probe can't go any higher.
Than 1, but the light can go higher than 1, right?
Yeah.
Well, one of the key goals of the Fulcrum Institute is really to create a cadre of teacher leaders for science and really learn how to share that expertise and those ideas with others. And having administrators here, it gives them a great opportunity to really hear from administrators about how teachers can best approach leadership within their district.
Any of those barriers and how you've been thinking about them?
The enemy is always time.
Oh, just because you integrated it doesn't replace it.
I think it's very important that principals talk with their teachers.
I think you folks have to understand just how much of an impact you can have on kids, because they're not getting to 11th grade and then deciding, I love physics. In 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, they're having a teacher, the folks in this room, who light that initial spark.
When you look at this process as a leader, you also have to think about what else is next and what else can I do. And for me, it's always looking at other opportunities just to take the information and share it.
I think that the sharing that they have done among themselves as professional colleagues has really elevated the kind of conversation and the level of instruction that is happening, and all of that benefits our students, because the better the teaching, the better the learning.
It guides me to do better questioning. I feel like I've done much better with inquiry.
This year I'm going to get way more in depth with the kids now because I have more tools and I have more knowledge that I learned just by doing it myself.
So we hope that they'll come away from this with a greater depth of understanding of the kinds of decisions that go into producing a number like the average temperature for January or the average temperature of the Earth this year.
Teachers have so many responsibilities, usually, that it's hard to get this kind of discussion going. So I think it is very unique and useful.